Bloom Apartments brings you an exceptional offer. For a limited time, get 2 months free, plus their unique all-inclusive package. Not bad for finding your secret garden in the heart of Gatineau. Visit bloomapartments.com.
Welcome to the third hour of the Elias Macko Show. Thanks for listening all week. And just a little program note, 11:30, going to be joined by British comedian Jimmy Carr ahead of his shows at Just for Laughs. We begin this third hour of the show on this story. On July 14th of this year, 22 Indigenous communities in Quebec signed a deal with the Government of Canada. The deal took 10 years to finalize and would fund Indigenous education programs from kindergarten to grade 12 over the course of 5 years. It's our pleasure to welcome Kahnawake Grand Chief Kahsennenhawe Sky Deer, who is on the line. Welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
So 10 years. Now, is this an indication of a complex deal or dragging of feet by government?
I think complexity. Every community has their own challenges. You know, the people who are responsible for education. I mean, it's at the foundation of our existence, right? You know, what we're teaching our children, our values, principles. Obviously, we have to learn everything in mainstream education systems as well. So it's definitely been 50 years in terms of Indigenous control of Indigenous education, which was a movement that tried to move away, obviously, from, the Catholic Church and nuns and priests controlling education for First Nations people. So it's definitely taken, like you said, a long time, 10 years of negotiations, but I think everybody's pretty satisfied and thrilled with the outcome and ready to have, this kind of funding, equitable, sustainable funding, because for the longest time, there was such an inequity in the way non-Indigenous children were funded in comparison to our Indigenous children. So to get this agreement, hats off to the number of whether it was education directors, chiefs. The organization that spearheaded this was called FNEC, First Nations Education Council. So representatives from all across, like you said, the 11 nations, 22 communities that make up First Nation demographic here in the region of Quebec. So they really did a phenomenal job, and we're very thrilled.
On the funding side, $1.1 billion. And one thing that strikes me, you just said the word satisfied, right? And there was something when I was watching the press conference and I was reading the coverage of it. There was a sort of sense, unlike previous times where I feel, Indigenous communities and governments working together, there was something here that felt different. Now, that's from my perspective. I don't know. Do you feel something different here with this deal?
To be honest, I wasn't present at the actual signing. There's been a bout of gastro or food poisoning that was going around, and I ended up contracting it, and I was so disappointed because obviously this was a major historic event that took place here in our territory in Kahnawake, and I missed it as the Grand Chief. It was so disheartening. So in terms of the feel or what was going on that day, I completely missed out, which, I had to send...
Aside from the ceremony, though, like aside from the press conference, just the satisfaction of this deal being done and what it means for the future of working together, Indigenous communities and governments.
Yeah, it's timely, Like I said, this whole everyone's saying reconciliation, and we have to do better. We have to change the way we're doing our affairs. So with the federal government, it's been good. I mean, these are two major announcements in this year. There was also the $40 billion announcement for the revamping of the child and family services, $20 billion, which will go toward revamping all of the service delivery and the way it's managed. But then it's also for those that were victims of the system. There's so many children that are taken from their homes and placed in non-Indigenous families and out of their communities. They completely lose touch, and then all of the same kind of things that happen in Indian residential school also takes place within the foster care system. So to have that announcement and then this one with regard to education, you're right. There's definitely a feeling of a different shift, I guess, in the way they're dealing with First Nations, but there's still so much more to be done.
We're with
And I'm not taking away from, like I said, the momentum, and um, I have to say hats off, right, in terms of getting these two major agreements over the line. But it's a testament to our people, Indigenous people, who have been pushing for and fighting for this equality. And that really is what it's all about. For years and years, decades, we've been underfunded, chronically underfunded in comparison to non-Indigenous kids.
We are with Kahnawake Grand Chief Kahsennenhawe Sky Deer, talking about a recent deal signed between 22 Indigenous communities in Quebec and the government of Canada. So let's talk about how this changes things. So education from kindergarten to grade 12. Is this come down? Does it make the bricks and mortar actual buildings better? The quality of the education? How will this change education?
So I think for our community specifically, we will see an increase of around 15 to 20 million annually. That is significant because for the longest time, teachers have been underpaid in comparison to teachers on the outside. We do have special needs programs. We weren't getting the efficient amounts of money for computers and different kind of things that need much upgrades regularly. So it will have impacts everywhere, and we don't have to nickel and dime. And I think what's most important is that there isn't strings attached. We could do things the way we feel it is important. And a major component is our language and culture. We have to incorporate more of that into the everyday learning of our children. So we will have the resources to ensure that, we're not only, like I said, educating our children in mainstream philosophies, the STEM, math and science and all that, but also in a culturally appropriate and, ensuring that they're revitalizing their Indigenous Kahnawake language.
And I'd be remiss not to ask you this today. And you'd mentioned earlier in the interview, the history of education in Indigenous communities and the connection to the church and getting away from that. And we've got the Pope visiting Canada. So, with all of those together, how are you feeling about the Pope's visit? Apologies that are coming or due. All of this coming together at this time. What are your thoughts?
I think it's all coalescing and timely. I think everything happens for a reason when it's meant to. I personally am not going to be attending the papal visit next week. I thought, it should be more reserved for those survivors who actually experienced and endured what the residential school system was in this country. But nonetheless, an apology is an apology. It's the actions afterward. The damage is done. So I think, the church will definitely have to find ways to support our communities and what has happened. I guess after that, we tend to use this terminology of multi-generational trauma, because if anybody could put themselves in that predicament of being yanked from your home, you're away from your family, you're put into this school, you're away from, your community, you're being taught. And if you speak your language, if you anything culturally, you're beaten. What does that say about your psyche after 5 years or 4 years when you come back and you return? How could you ever be a normal functioning human? You never experience love or compassion. And, it's not to say every single school was this horrid, but some of the stories we've heard from survivors, it's heart-wrenching. So, when people tend to stereotype Indigenous people or, they're a bunch of alcoholics or they're this or they're that, well, think about what a lot of our people have been through, and that's what we have to overcome. So there's a lot of healing that has to happen, and an apology is one step in that, in our own healing journey.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that a lot of emotion is going to come out next week, and there's a lot of important steps and gestures to be taken next week. I want to thank you for coming on. Thank you so much.
Yep, anytime. Have a great day, everybody. Good weekend.
Grand Chief Kahsennenhawe Sky Deer from Kahnawake.